Hello, welcome everyone. Cannot believe this is September. We're in September. We're in our September webinar. Thank you for being here. You are joining PKI Insights, where every month we cover topics that impact our PKI community. Topics from what's coming, topics from what we're seeing in the field, topics that matter to folks that we work with, and also from thought leaders that we learn from. I am Nick Sarakolbit. I'm the Director of Business Development, and I'm joined by Brad Butlick, aka super famous, actually the only PKI cartoonist out there. I challenge if there's any other PKI cartoonist that is out there, please let us know. Otherwise, Brad, that's you.
I'm willing to accept that as a badge of honor.
That's great. Well, today is a very special, it has a near and dear meaning to, I think, our hearts. Brad, I know that you've been working a lot with utilities. And so this is a topic that I wanted to talk about with you. And so I'm glad you're joining us. Just for housekeeping, for these webinars, we love when you and the audience chime in with questions. We try to get all of the questions answered, and if not, I think we have a pretty good track record of responding back, not only from myself or Brad. If we certainly can't answer the question, we'll go and connect with Jake, Mark, and the rest of the team to make sure that we can get you the details you need. But appreciate the time, and let's get into it. Brad, if you're looking at this agenda, which one of these probably is going to resonate most with some of the leadership, organizational leadership that's on the call? Just curious.
I think it's more from a, how to deal with your management with PKI. PKI is, unfortunately, for a lot of organizations, I run into this all the time, it is very much unknown and under-respected. And in the latter part of this presentation, I'm going to kind of show off a bunch of the use cases that are now falling into the realm of PKI. And I think by people understanding how important PKI is becoming, they might be able to explain it to their management better. So the days of having the money spent on firewalls and not on PKI, maybe they're going to come into some type of parity, where the amount of money being spent on PKI will be at least equal to the money that's being spent on firewalls. I mean, don't get me wrong, firewalls are absolutely positively important, but whether or not they're the most important is something that we have to get away from. And since Nick said I'm kind of a cartoonist, I put this cartoon out a number of years ago. And because I really kind of was upset with organizations that were always coming to me and saying, what is the ROI on what you're selling? And the ROI in security is incredibly hard to calculate. And so I decided to illustrate how difficult it was to calculate by going to the absolute absurd and showing a kind of a fortune teller. If we could be in a situation where, you could go to your fortune teller and say, you'll be hacked on, December 21st in 2025, and you will lose $3 million. You could easily go to your management and say, hey, can I get $2 million to make sure that it doesn't cost us $3 million? That's the only way that really the ROI in security works. And, like I was saying before, firewalls seem to be the area where you can go to your management and say, I need another $200,000 to get a bigger, better, stronger, faster firewall. And they're like, okay, fine. And, from a PKI perspective, you go to them and say, I need $40,000 for a PKI project. There's like, what's PKI? It's the difference between the knowledge of what a firewall does and the knowledge of what a PKI does for an organization is massive. Yeah. And we remember when we put this slide deck together, Nick, I was talking about how firewalls are kind of a prevention measure. It's preventing, the bad guys from getting in. PKI is the one thing that allows an organization to actually perform secure functions. It is the only thing that's really allowing you to perform secure functions. So move on to the next slide, please, and we can kind of talk a little bit about that. So, Nick, you want to talk about this one?
This is I think this is another interesting point in that who wouldn't want a check engine light, in tech or in IT specifically around, like your PKI environment. And Brad, let's just stop here for a second.
Sure.
That last slide with the cartoon, I just celebrated a birthday recently. It's my 50th. And I just realized that I cannot see, like I need glasses. So for folks on the call on this conference, if you weren't able to see that cartoon, just IMS will send it to you because I certainly, the letters are really small, but the takeaway was really important about,
Mhm.
how can we predict that's in IT and in engineering and so forth, that the best in order to get, to a stable operations and service, we want to be able to predict and be able to have like something that we know is forecast that there's an issue. So, this check engine light is really interesting because there isn't really anything like that today. And so if I were to take a step back and ask you, Brad, like why is it so important under the covers or under the hood for utilities specifically? And we're focused on utilities today, and I see the audience, and there's a large variety of other industries here and other companies here.
Still applicable.
But I just want to let's touch on that a little bit. What's at stake? What's under the hood really that makes this a little bit more complicated than people
But
realize?
I think every one of us has had a car that while driving, the check engine light comes on. And if you've ever noticed when that occurs, there's typically not even a hiccup in the function of the vehicle. It is still driving, it's still braking, it's still steering, but the check engine light came on. So why is that? Well, it's because there's something within the diagnostic system of the car that says something's not right. Not for a shameless plug, but I'm gonna plug it anyway. Our PKI Spotlight product is akin to a check engine light. PKI is one of those the technologies that if it's working, you don't know it's working. But the hidden risk here is that while it's working, it might be insecure. It might be allowing the outside bad actors to come in and elevate their privileges within their PKI. Well, the PKI is still functioning; it's still doing what it's supposed to be doing, but there's something that's happened within the PKI that says you need to look at this issue, and that's what we do with our PKI Spotlight. Is we have alerting system so that if somebody makes an innocent change within the PKI, primarily because they might not know better, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. And we'll send an alert out that says, okay, this change has caused you to be insecure. You're still operating. No one in your organization is calling you. No one's complaining, but you've actually opened yourself up to a security risk. And that's important, especially with PKI. It is not a very binary technology. It's working, not working, is kind of how people look at it. When it's not working, it's because a certificate or a CRIL is expired. That's a problem because people can't use the system. But in between working and not working, there's this whole series of potential failures that you've introduced. And that's why it's very important to actually, monitor your PKI for its security, because and most people would say on this understand and would agree that it's incredibly complicated, and there's not enough people within your organization that understand it thoroughly.
Yeah, and I think if we were to deep dive a little bit into the scenarios and the use cases around utilities. Utilities are there's there and for folks who are like, hey, like I still don't get it. Like I don't get it. We have digital certificates. What's the problem? We don't experience an outage. We're fine. Let's just kind of deep dive a little bit into some of these why utilities, why we're calling this out, or why, or at least we're trying to get people to pay a little bit more attention to this. Um, Looking at the environment specifically, you want to talk about like the various different environments that utilities have over some of these other industries, and then also around some of the compliance and some of the like use cases, some of the very specifics that utilities have that, quite frankly, others don't have the similar type of scenario.
Well, usually within a utility, there's the IT and the OT. There's the people that are running the billing, the business, and everything on the IT side, and the OT side is the group that's running the actual systems within the utility. And it's incredibly important for the OT side to make sure that their PKI is properly secured, because these are the groups that have the access to, let's say, switches or valves that might be at the end of a wire that can be opened or closed based on some instruction from the headquarters. And all of those systems, if they have if it's a dedicated wire, that's one thing. But if it's an IP based wire, you run the risk of having some bad actor getting access to that. There was a case, I think it was last year or the year before, but definitely within the last 2 years, of a utility in Texas that was a water treatment facility. And some bad actor got in and was able to open up a valve. Well, the valve, all it did was it filled up a reservoir, and they were able to catch it before it overflowed. But what if the valve that the bad actor got hold of was able to divert wastewater into the water system? I mean, that would be terrible. So it's incumbent upon, especially the OT side, to make sure that their PKI is properly secured, because digital certificates within the PKI space are the most powerful way of making sure that the bad actors cannot get access to the systems.
Yeah. And let's drill into that a little bit more. And I kind of moved the slide over, but when we talk about risk, we talk about the ones that are like that go unnoticed. We look at those examples that you gave. In OT environments, there's very specific certificates that are used, right, by not within the company, but by contractors and vendors and so forth. So I think more than most other industries, there's so many of these certificates. The certificates have to come from somewhere, right, Brad?
Yep.
And so whether the PKI is from a vendor, whether it's from a partner, even from a contractor, we know that these certificates have to be configured and secured in a specific way. And they actually are required to do that. And this is what's so interesting. In my research and in talking with several of our customers, utilities have, they've got like some recommendations from NIST, and then they got some like must-haves to do that they must configure to be compliant with like NERC SIP. And then, there's like the common use case around any of this for anyone on the call who is not familiar with the business benefit of public key infrastructure is on the encryption side. It's an encryption solution. And so that encryption solution uses certificates, and they're all over the place, and in all sorts of different environments. So just calling that out, I think, is very specific that, for whatever reason, there are mandates around, like NERC SIP on security and ACLs and controls and so forth. And we're just bringing attention, right, Brad, around, how, why PKI should be included in that.
Well, the other thing is, your slide up here, starts at the top with pen tests. Most organizations have pen tests.
Yeah.
What's that?
No, I said it's really interesting. Pen test. We didn't mean to put this as by any ways, in many means, right? I don't think it's in any chronological order.
No,
but pen tests seem to be the one that get a lot of attention, at least for what we've seen recently.
Oh, well, any company that performs pen tests, they hire an outside organization that comes in and does the pen test. And I guarantee you that company is going to concentrate on the PKI. The pen testers love to attack the PKI, primarily because most organizations have an ill-configured PKI, and it's the one area that the pen testers know that they're going to be able to go and say, "See, told you so. You needed to have this pen test done because you got this problem here." I can honestly say that 100% of our customers that are using, again, our PKI Spotlight, they've never failed a pen test, and we've had pen testing companies come up to us at conferences and say, "We really hate you." Because we can thwart any of their pen testing that comes out. The other one that I know you have in here is like, outages. We see a lot of outages happening within organizations, primarily because they've got a certificate that has expired without their knowledge, or a accrual that's expired without their knowledge. These are all things that are relatively easy to make sure that they don't happen. But again, this goes back to companies spending the appropriate amount of money on their PKI to make sure it doesn't happen. My biggest one in here is ownership. PKI doesn't fall into a definite class within most organizations. Is it network architecture? Is it security? Security for most organizations is firewalls, and if it falls into the same line as the firewall side, the firewalls will always get priority over PKI. That's just been my experience in talking to hundreds of companies on this. So the true fact is, on the ownership side, if you as an organization haven't developed a cryptographic group, someone that understands cryptography well and doesn't understand firewalls, that's an okay thing. You're better off if you actually develop a cryptographic group, because there's lots of things within cryptography. I mean, we've talked about certificates, but one of the things we haven't talked about is data encryption. Data encryption is also cryptographically related, but it's in the symmetric side as opposed to the asymmetric side. They're related, but they're a little bit separate. But they need to have a group of people that understand the difference between symmetric and asymmetric encryption. I know when I used to hire system engineers for the companies I've worked for, and the first question I always asked an applicant is, explain to me the difference between symmetric and asymmetric encryption. I never asked them another question in the interview if they couldn't answer that single question. And it's funny, I used to do presentations around the world on the basics of cryptography. And that was one of the first questions I always asked to my audience. And my audience was always security professionals. And I was really surprised that only about 5% of my audience could answer that question. This is a basic fundamental building block of cryptography, and 5% of a security audience couldn't answer, or 95% couldn't answer it. I was shocked. I kept on answering this question thinking that I was going to find a larger group that was smarter, and never really did. It was always between 5 and 10%, which is still ridiculously low. Which is why the last portion of this is education and knowledge needs to be an area where people start spending time, effort, and money. Most organizations have like one or two people that understand this stuff. And I always laugh, and there's a later on slide in here. It's like, what do you do when your crypto guy goes on vacation? Well, he doesn't go on vacation, is usually the answer. And that's the wrong answer. So, Nick, we're taking a little longer than I think we expected. So let's move on to the next slide.
This is your favorite slide.
This is my favorite slide. I've been using this lately when trying to explain to people how important PKI is. And there's a poll question that's going to come up in a second. And I'd like the people who are on this call to select the use cases they're currently using PKI for. And if you want, take a screenshot of this. Somewhere along the line, show this to your management. Show them how many different use cases there are and how many you're currently using. Now, within a few seconds, you're going to get another poll question, which is going to be, which of these 12 items you think in the next 12 months you're going to be asked to do. So the other thing that I need you to consider is that these are 12 current use cases. And as we're approaching post-quantum encryption and all that kind of stuff, there are going to be more use cases that are going to be added to this list. So while there's more use cases added to this list, there are going to be more use cases that your company is going to be using. So think of PKI as this basket. And if the old cliche is, putting all your eggs in one basket, you better make sure it's a strong basket. this is where I think it's very beneficial to a lot of the people on this call is show your management how many different systems you have within your organizations that rely upon PKI. And if it's improperly configured, all those systems are now going to be subject to some type of risk.
Yeah. I think it kind of goes hand in hand with the previous slide when you talked about ownership. I keep going back to SIP, but SIP, focuses on, access, secure system security, and change management, right? And so one would argue we've seen ownership around, SIP standards and compliance to SIP. So that could be ownership, right, Brad? But
Yes.
necessarily, but compliance, if it doesn't necessarily mean security. So I think ownership here means what exactly are you trying to achieve? If it's security and resilience, then ownership takes on a different sort of meaning, and it's also across multiple business lines. So if I were to look at this use cases, it's not just because most organizations are going to look at this and say this is an IT problem or this is an IT, go figure this out and we're covered, we're good. But if you peel back, there's almost like different swim lanes through these, all of them that relate to the business like impact. There's related to tech, there's related to vendors and contractors, partners, and so forth. So they all can't be siloed, because I think that's what we're seeing and we're still seeing.
Mhm.
And so ownership really is going to be a multiple. So it's going to be business, tech, and potentially others, vendors as well, in order to figure out holistically how these use cases should be, managed, no different than the rest
Right.
of the key services and critical infrastructure in utilities. Um,
Yeah, but
how,
look at this list. I mean, imagine you have one use case within your organization. You
yeah.
lose that one use case because of a bad PKI. That's gonna be damage. If most of these organizations
Pick
like
one, right? I mean, your example about getting in and turning a lever or whatever it is. I mean, that's VPN, right? So just pick one, and we can go from there. I think I was at one of these B-sides meetups here in Denver, and there was someone from the OT side who manages their SCADA environment, who literally was up there saying and show was basically like a lot of this stuff was implemented before he was even there. You just can't rip and replace a SCADA system. This has been in place for a long time. So when some of these meters and some of these devices get installed, they're oftentimes by vendors and contractors. They're installed with the default password and also a default certificate. Let's just be real. So I think you're calling out, hey, that's good. It's a good conversation to take this list, and then have some more meaningful conversations around, what you can do and how you can prioritize them.
Yep, agreed. Now move on to the next slide because I think that one's also important too. Um,
Is this another one of your cartoons?
it is another one of my
It
cartoons. This one,
reminds me. It reminds me of The Price is Right. Do you remember that the little what was
yeah,
it? You name the price, he keeps going up. You don't want him to go
yep.
over the edge.
This one is actually an animated. If you were to go to LinkedIn and you were to search on my cartoons, this one I sent out as my first and so far only animated cartoon with a wonderful British accent of a narrator in the back of it. But since a lot of times in these types of sessions I can't do the animation, I just use the last slide, and I just wanted to show organizations that. The uses of PKI have kind of crept up on us. Back in the early 2000s when we started using PKI for SSL, we really had no idea at that time that we'd be here, 20 some years later, looking at mobile and VPN and Citrix and all these other things. And most organizations, their PKIs, I would say, were developed like around the 2006 timeframe, and they did not anticipate all the different use cases. So that's one of the things that organizations really need to start to get grips on is the fact that their foundational PKI is incapable of handling what the market is kind of forcing upon you from a security perspective. So getting your PKI under management starting now, and maybe in some cases, ripping it out and starting over, is not a bad idea because there's going to be many, many more use cases coming down the pike, and it's going to be much more important to get a better handle on it.
It's really interesting. It's really interesting. I think we looked for those who are not utility on the call. I think the closest to this is healthcare, especially around the use cases, and then the sheer volume of the service that's being provided. If you think about like the number of data centers and the number of tech that utilities are having to implement in order to meet the demand of the consumer that wants to flip the light switch on or wants to do their AI chat, prompts and all the things, that requires electricity. And there's a massive ecosystem that's required on the utility side in order to meet the demand. So when we look at this, it's that requirement on the use cases, the requests for certificates. So certificates have PKIs, is exponentially growing year over year to a point where, quite frankly, from what we've heard from customers and folks in the field, it's just very overwhelming.
Yep, agreed. And don't feel so bad. Everyone's like this. It's these are some of the things that I've had companies tell me over the last number of years that I just absolutely love. And if some of these things hold true, I'd be happy to hear from you. But one of the greatest ones, we have more CAs than people understand them. I mean, I was talking to a company just yesterday that had 120 CAs, and they want to start managing them better. Duh. You got 120 CAs and you're not managing them right now? My God, when were you at 60 CAs? Where were you at 30 CAs?
It's interesting. It's interesting why the tipping point. I think it's if that's ever really increasing. So to your point, like, what do you think is the tipping point that they're finally realizing and bringing this up and having that conversation with you?
I don't know, but 120 is a little bit out there. I mean,
that's most a lot.
5, 6 is still a lot, but 120 is just over the top.
Yeah.
The other one, this is something you have to really worry about, is there are a lot of applications that are being installed right now that put a CA in as part of the application. So you want to kind of watch it because, unknown CAs are becoming kind of the new shadow IT that what I'm starting to see. I also love this one. Our PKI guy can never take a vacation. That's I should make this guys and girls or whatever because there are actually a number of female PKI specialists out there, which is good. Documentation. What documentation? I get this all the time. Again, going back to most organizations had the PKI installed somewhere around 2006, and the person that installed it is long gone, and they left them without any documentation. It's a standard refrain. I've heard this all the time. So this is on the best practice side. You want to go through this?
Yeah, let's go through it. And I don't know if Mike or Joe, are there any questions specifically that people wanted us to ask or have answered? If not, just let us know.
Well, I do want to maybe take the time at this point because we are running low on time. There's a lot of companies here that have not worked with us specifically. Please reach out to me. I don't bite. I'm I have a lot of very good, talented people that we have within PKI Solutions that can help you with any issues that you might be having. And it's also good to maybe have a demonstration of our PKI Spotlight solution. It is fantastic when it comes to getting your PKI under some type of control and management. And as we've shown, it's getting more complicated. There are more use cases. It's time.
Yeah, and I would also say that next month we will be at GridSecCon. That is the security conference hosted by the EISEC group from NERC. It'll be in Vegas. We are actually doing a lunch and learn. Very, very honored to be able to do that. So we're doing a lunch and learn for the utility membership that are attending. So we'll be following up with some lessons learned from that also. If you're interested, just reach out to Brad.
There's a poll question that should be coming up from Mike about if you're going to attend. If you do attend, please stop by our booth and say hello. We are going to be doing demonstrations of our PKI Spotlight there, so you can see it there. But the two main things I wanted to from this best practice thing is getting your management to understand how important PKI is. Use that list of the 12 use cases. Use it to your advantage. And the other one is IT staff training. Whether you know it or not, we have very, very comprehensive, very in-depth ADCS and PKI training. And we're not talking, a couple of hours. This is like 80 hours worth of in-depth training. By the time you get finished, you'll be an expert and actually be able to go back to your management and ask for a raise, because there's so few people in this industry that understand PKI well that they should be some of the highest paid IT professionals there. So Nick, we're at the top or bottom of the hour, as it were. This is a 30-minute presentation.
Yep.
I don't necessarily need to go through all this because we've been there, but stay tuned for information about our next webinar. Our next webinar is actually going to be a very special one because what is it, Nick?
It's our 50th.
It's our 50th webinar. Can you imagine our 50th one? So we're going to probably do something quite special for our 50th webinar.
Yeah, you definitely want to be there.
Again, please, reach out to me. There's a poll question that says, do you want to talk to me? If you click yes, I'm going to reach out to you, and hopefully we can have a conversation. So it's been a pleasure talking with all of you. Nick.
Thank you very much for joining, Brad, and everyone out there. Take care.
Thanks a lot.